So, so we'll ask each of you for some sort of piece of advice for entrepreneurs that either helped you succeed or something you wouldn't do again because it screwed up your business. Um, and then we'll do the wrap up. And yes, I think we're going to have a great show today. Everything looks super
Yeah, I'm
interesting.
really
to me
looking
here.
forward to it. Sweetie Pie, is it recording? Can you see?
Here's wiggle the thingy. Yeah, see at the top there it says recording.
I've actually done shows where we haven't recorded them. It was a lot of fun, but not so great for the radio.
So, Shekhar, is it okay if I bring up SAP?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. That was years ago. I guess that's still around, right?
It is very much around.
So do you integrate with SAP?
Yeah, we integrate with every supply chain planning system and all of the transportation management, warehouse management systems. So everything that like touches the journey of a parcel, we have integrated, including the carriers.
Okay, so it's safe to ask you about that. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I didn't want to ask you and say, no way. So, okay.
In fact, like one of the guys who actually works on my team, his name is Ramesh. So he built SAP HANA.
What is SAP HANA?
SAP HANA is the intelligence platform or the in-memory processing layer of intelligence across all of the SAP modules.
Oh, okay.
And you can draw insights and analytics, and basically you can infer what to do with the business. It's kind of like a
wow.
Prior to all these LLMs coming, it was all very deterministic in terms of what do you do to move the business forward. What are you gleaning out from the metrics and the data that is coming through the network. So that he built actually, it's a high scale, high powered platform where you're literally streaming billions of records.
Wow.
It needs a different type of hardware to even process that.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the problems right now, right? Is the having enough energy and hardware to handle all the software.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think I see the innovation in the future is going to come on that, in the sense it'll become a more commoditized infrastructure in the future. So people are already beginning to build models which actually takes 1/10 or 1/100th or 1/1,000,000th of what a typical large language model does.
Like DeepSeek did. DeepSeek came in.
And then now there is going to be an emergence of also all the vertical AI solutions, so which is really proficient in doing the specific industry topic much better. It's almost like going and searching for redwood trees and redwood forests versus trying to search them in Amazon rainforest.
Well, we should. I don't want to go off too far on this tangent, but I don't really feel like it's a tangent. I mean, maybe we should talk about this some on the show when we're actually doing the show.
Yeah, for
as,
sure.
As we discuss your.
Yeah, and then so just a couple of reminders. Number one is that our audience is a mass market audience.
Yeah.
So everybody from truck drivers to MBAs, right, will be listening. So we want to make sure that we speak in ways that we can reach everybody. And so I don't want to stay away from the technology, but we also need to make sure that we say it in a way that ordinary people can understand it. And then the second thing, our stories are great. So stories about your entrepreneurial journey, how you built this project, stories about how you were successful with your clients. All of those are engaging, and they bring the listener closer to us. So that's the goal, is for us to maintain their attention through the show. And it's going to be a combination of business advice, storytelling, and promoting your project. So
we have some questions here around that. So I don't want to go through them all right now because we want to be spontaneous.
Otherwise we won't finish.
Yeah.
So any other questions before we start?
Couple quick ones is when we're not talking, do you want us muted or do you want us to stay on?
Usually our guests stay on unless there's construction in the background or but if it's quiet, because you may jump in at some point. So,
Great.
Yeah.
so
Other
Yeah.
question is the introduction at the top of the show. Do we assume that's the only introduction that they have to us just for like the first 90 days question? Just wondering what context the listener has before we jump in on those.
sure. So, in radio, we try to keep the introductions to a sentence or two. And then, I will kick off the your new business journey question, and I will say, I'll probably go to Shekhar first and just say, so Shekhar, tell us about that. And then you would introduce yourself and say, hi, I'm uh, Noelle London, founder of Illoominus, and this is what I have to say. And so that would be like the ideal way to do it. Sometimes people
Great.
just jump in,
Mm.
but that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
great. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Good question. Other questions? All right.
Am I visible to you guys in the first place?
You are.
You
Yeah.
are
I love your background.
coming through
Okay.
loud and clear.
Where are you located?
I'm in Dublin, California, which is like East Bay.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Add a little more light to my place. That way you guys can see me. Okay.
We got a pro here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, we want to have a conversational show. We don't do any gotchas. And just we want to have fun. So that's the
And if you say something you didn't mean to say, we can edit it out. So
right.
just say, "Oh, wait a minute. I need to call my boss a stupid jerk."
I work for Coca-Cola. Oh no, I mean Pepsi.
Well, I work for both, so it's fun.
That's funny. All right. 3, 2, 1. I'm Richard Gerhardt.
And I'm Elizabeth Gerhardt. You just heard some snippets from our show. It was a great one. Are you thinking of starting a new business? Stay tuned.
Okay. This is the real deal. 3, 2, 1. I'm Richard Gerhardt, founder of Gerhardt Law, full-service intellectual property law firm specializing in patents, trademarks, and copyrights.
And I'm Elizabeth Gerhardt, founder of Gear Media Studios, a content creation studio in Summit, New Jersey, with a focus on podcasting, and I have a consulting business too.
Welcome to Passage to Profit, the road to entrepreneurship, where we talk with celebrities and entrepreneurs about their business journeys. Today, very special treat, we have Shekhar Natarajan, who is a business leader and strategist for AI-guided supply chain management. And he's also the visionary founder of Orchestro.AI. And he also has 150 patents. So we're going to have to ask him about that.
Oh my gosh, yes. And then we have two amazing guests. Now, I have to ask you this question. Do you have a company where your HR systems, your software systems are all introverts and they just will not talk to each other? If so, you want to hear what Noelle London has to say, because she is helping clean up the HR software mess so you can get everything you need when you need it. And then we have Curt Moore. So I have to ask you this. Have you ever been worried that a squatter would take your house? I mean, there's been stories on the news about people squatting in people's houses and getting the title somehow and selling it out from under them. Well, worry no more, because if you listen to Curt Moore, you could figure out how to keep this from happening to you.
Well, that's awesome. I can't wait to get to our distinguished guest. But before we do that, it's time for your new business journey. 2 in 5 Americans are business owners or thinking about becoming business owners. And so we like to ask our panel a question. And today's question is, what's the smartest thing you did in the first 90 days of starting your business? And what do you wish you'd done differently? So Shekhar, coming around to you, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I know that it's a real honor to be here. So like I would guess, like I wouldn't say this is the smartest thing, but I felt that this was the right thing to do, which was to really build with moral clarity. Build a company with moral clarity versus technical clarity, right? I did not go after the product market fit and all those things. I just said, does the values and the market fit together? And I had
So,
to ask myself, is the problem really worth solving even if it fails?
mm. So
Right?
when you say,
And that became the compass of what I was trying to basically go after.
so,
Um,
so when
go
you
ahead.
focused on the moral aspects of the business, I mean, there's a pretty wide variety of morals out there. How did you
Yes.
tune yourself to that? How did you make that work?
Well, for one, basically, you're a product of, how you grow up. Okay.
Yeah.
And for me, I had this incredible journey in my life. I come from slums in India, where everything about access to education, paying for funerals, or even like, just attending school, was a difficult thing, you know. And
Mhm.
I grew up in a single room with like, 8 members in my house. And when I came to United States, I just had $34 in my pocket. But what made me who I am is my father's hand. My father used to make 150 rupees, 150 rupees, which is $1.75 a month. And he never kept it for himself. He actually would go and help everyone around in the community. And so he left a lot of angels for me, Richard. And those angels have guided me. I remember once I swirled on a 5-lane highway in Washington, D.C. at 3:45 in the afternoon. I missed everything by a whisker, and I stood on the brake lane. What do you call it? Not physics, not luck. It's angels.
But and just for your information, in New Jersey, we call that the Jersey Slide, when you cross 5 lanes of traffic in one fell swoop.
Well, speaking of angels, I got to tell you, my guardian angels are pretty worn out at this point.
so,
Well,
so, and
when,
I lived in an industry where it is deeply human, right? Like supply chains, if you think about it, 500 million people work in the world of supply chain. 500 million. From all the way from extracting raw materials to making the products, distributing it out, and bringing it to your door. 500 million people.
Mm,
The only two countries bigger than that is India and China.
mm.
Mm.
Okay. So if you are actually going to change the industry, you have to basically humanize everything that you're trying to do. You cannot like forget what makes the system. And so for me, if I'm going to be changing the world of logistics and supply chain, organizing and orienting myself, just like my father did it for me, being an angel in many people's life was what I wanted to be in this journey, and helping that human goodness to come out in the process of making this company.
I mean, that's great. I do want to come back to this during your interview, because I think that's a really interesting topic, because I think it's very aspirational, and I'm curious about how you took that and those principles and integrated them into your business. But I want to hear from our other panelists too. Curt, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I echo Shekhar. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast. I look forward to this very much. And I'm very impressed with what Shekhar just said. That's very moving. He's got a great story there. I'm certainly interested in learning more about that. With respect to myself and my company's journey, the first 90 days, I would say things that we did right, and I look back on and saying we got that right, would be we definitely engaged a strong, diverse management team, uh, professionals, including legal, accounting, finance, marketing. And as a leader, I think it's very important to keep those people communicating, keep them aligned, and make sure that we adapt to changes in what's going on in our business cycle. Things that maybe you wish you did better looking back. I think companies sometimes, and we were a little bit guilty of it, just waiting too long to start. I think oftentimes startup companies are always saying, well, if I just do this, then maybe I'll be ready to go. Or, okay, we did that. Now let's do this too. I want to be sure that's perfect before we press go. I would just encourage people, get it close enough and then go, and let the business start to naturally form. You're going to make mistakes. I can't imagine anybody has ever started a company and been perfect. And I can't imagine anyone's ever come out and just said, I wouldn't change a thing. So I think just some of the reluctance to start, to try to set that aside and get yourself squared up and ready to go. Believe in your product, believe in your service, whatever you're offering. Take a hard look at the market that you're proposing to engage. Make sure you have a story of why would my product or my service be useful in the current market, the current competition environment. Whether that's a pricing strategy or just a better product or better customer service, whatever it is that your story is, be sure to promote that and then stick with it and enter the market.
Great. Thank you, Curt. So, Noelle, welcome to the show. Noelle London, tell us about what you did right in the first 90 days and maybe what you would do differently looking back at it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. As Richard mentioned, my name's Noelle London. I'm the founder and CEO of Illoominus. We're the first employee data platform that is powered by AI, built for the mid-market, and built with a community of about 300 different HR leaders. I would say, I think similar to Shekhar, I think that there was a whole lot of journey that happened before those first 90 days. I would actually say that the journey before the first 90 days is probably the most important. For myself personally, I was fortunate to start working with entrepreneurs right out of undergrad with the Peace Corps. I was down in Nicaragua for a couple of years, learned there that I'd actually been an entrepreneur and didn't necessarily know it and didn't have the vocabulary for it at the time, but I'd had businesses before. And I knew that, to me, entrepreneurship was all about creative problem solving. I fell in love with it. I knew that I was going to be a founder and I was going to start a company. And so what I did is I spent about a decade getting ready to launch this company. So, Curt, I hear you on you wait too long to start. But what I did during that decade is I spent a lot of time around entrepreneurs. I worked for startups. I was an investor myself. I started incubator programs and I led corporate innovation teams. And so what that taught me is, how do you build great companies? It also allowed me to help a whole lot of people along the way because when you start a company, you need a lot of help. You ask a lot of favors. You ask too many favors, but you really need to be able to build up that social capital before you launch. So I would say that for me, before those 90 days, there was a whole lot of work that went into this thing. I was definitely not the person that said, oh, I thought about starting a company. A lot of people say they think about starting a company. It doesn't mean that you're actually doing it. They're very different things. So for me, I would say getting ready to launch the company. If anybody that's listening is thinking about that, you're serious about it, you're ready to give everything up for it. There's so many resources that are out on the market. They're free resources. There's a lot of good advice. There's also a lot of bad advice that's out there, but really take in the resources that are there to support you. You don't have to start on your own. In my first 90 days, I think the best thing that I did is I had a paying customer and I was onboarding said paying customer. So didn't start the clock, didn't go in, this was very much a side of the desk type of thing until we had real revenue and I actually had to quit my job to keep running this business. So I would say, focus on the part of getting ready before you make the jump. really know the problem, really know that there's a market for this problem before you jump in. See that somebody's going to pay you, they're going to sign a contract before you go all in on this solution. And then those first 90 days were an absolute blur. All I will say is I'm glad that we just moved really fast. We kind of, like Shekhar mentioned, and he was talking about values. For us, we set our values and our behaviors on day one for the organization, and we just moved and we went, and we were super nimble because those first 90 days, all you're doing is just learning and adapting. So, that's all I would say of, what went into those first 90 days. If I could change anything, I don't know. I kind of can't look back. I made a million mistakes probably in those first 90 days, but I also think that, they built us and they made us stronger as well.
Perfect. Elizabeth.
Well, when we decided that we were going to refurbish our studio for use by other people, I think one thing that we did right in the first 90 days, first of all, we did do a lot of research to see if there would be a market. I actually started a meetup, and this was like a year before the studio opened, to see if there were local people who would come and that would want to use a podcast or content creation studio. And then one thing we did right was I started really networking, and we had a grand opening. We had the mayor come with the big pair of scissors and the ribbon. It's, it's a storefront, basically. It's a physical space that people rent, and got a lot of business from that. So we have a corporate client now that's a repeat customer, and we've had a few other people use the studio, and some people say they want to do repeat business here. Getting people over the hump is a little tough because people don't like being on video, and it's kind of intimidating with all these cameras that we have in here and everything. But that was one, I think, mistake I made, was that I didn't realize. I mean, I thought I would do some coaching, but when we first had this idea, we thought people would just come and know how to do it and just use the studio. I really have to be a hands-on coach, which I'm getting paid for, so that's fine. And I enjoy helping people and doing it. But I think one mistake was underestimating how much help people need to start a podcast, because it's not easy for people. This is not easy. And there's a lot of steps to it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I guess, I'm listening to everybody talk, and I'm just thinking about when we started Gerhardt Law, I think I did everything backwards. So maybe I should start with all the things that I did wrong first. Well, for example, like, it's been 20 years since we started, and it's only been like the last year that I've actually even been really thinking hard about company culture. I started as an attorney, and we're not really trained in, business protocol, business structures. I took one class that told me I had to learn about marketing. I had to learn about, finance. I had to learn about HR. And over the years, I've just kind of maneuvered my way through these. And, I've definitely had strategies, but when you talk about things like cultures and values, I'm not sure I really completely understood that concept until, just recently. And even now, just kind of talking about it. I think what I thought would help make us successful was my personal knowledge of intellectual property. And also, I felt like I had an authenticity that clients would find appealing. And so I came from the corporate world where attorneys had the company as a client, and you were always thinking about the company's interest first before your own personal interest. And so when it came to counseling clients, I was always like, well, what's in the best interest of you? Less than what's in my best interest as a business owner. And I think that single kind of concept went a really long way in helping us, grow. And so I think, the best thing that I did was maybe not spend so much time thinking in terms of business structures, and just kind of being myself and, learning as I went. And I guess if I had things to do over again, maybe I would be a little bit more deliberate, and maybe I would get a little bit more education in the ways of managing a company. But everything's turned out great. And I guess, what they say, based on what I've heard here, is, the first 90 days of a company can really kind of define your trajectory. And so I think when you're doing it, you just kind of have to trust your gut and, build momentum as we go. So that's the takeaway from that. So now we need to talk to our featured guest in a little bit more detail. Shekhar, once again, welcome to the show. If your supply chain could think for itself and outsmart your current one, then Shekhar Natarajan is the guy to talk to. He's a leader in supply chain management and strategy and the founder and CEO of Orchestro.AI. They orchestrate entire delivery networks without human intervention and have transformed giants like Walmart and PepsiCo. And the first question I want to ask may be obvious, Shekhar, but what is supply chain?
Well, supply chain and logistics is basically the art and science of movement of things. Okay. And this is the movement of anything, to be honest. Anything can be considered a supply chain. Like, bees going and pollinating is a supply chain because it actually creates the ecosystem. Products moving from China all the way to our door is a supply chain, right? You basically like manufacturing like something in your handcrafting it and trying to get it into someone else's hand is supply chain, right? So supply chain is all around us, but it is also invisible to us. Invisible to us. The reason why I say that, it's like an underbelly. People only hear talking about supply chains when things don't work. Imagine COVID. Imagine vaccines not being there. Imagine like Purell hand sanitizers not available. Imagine diapers not available. Imagine kids not getting the toys during Christmas. That was because supply chains were very fragile. They were broken systems. And it's a collection of many, 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 many different parties. So let me give you a good example. Like a can of, pear, like a dole pear, the pears grow in Chile, gets transported to Thailand, gets cut there, gets packaged in China, and moves to New York store and gets sold for 50 cents. So that pear actually moved 20,000 miles across the world before it showed up in your hands. And there are so many people who actually touch that journey. So people think of supply chains as these like sophisticated systems, but these are all humans, doing a lot of miracles so that you are not disappointed as a customer.
So, Shekhar, you're a master of artificial intelligence, and here we are talking about human beings being a part of essential part of the supply chain process.
Yeah.
How do you marry those two? Isn't that a paradox?
That's what people would say, right? No, absolutely not. And the story actually goes back to the genesis of what I was talking about, right? So in 2005, okay, my father slipped into coma. He was an angel maker in many people's lives. And I was rushed to go to India. When I reached home, my father basically is 88% of his brain was completely damaged. He couldn't recognize me. I couldn't recognize him because he was completely like fragile. And here he was like a healthy guy who would like do yoga every day, would like keep himself very fit, and he slipped into coma. And at that time, I had to make a decision about whether my father needs to be alive or not.
Oh my gosh.
And you don't hit like let's go button. You pause, you think, and you think. And sometimes you think for 13 days and never get the answer. And I woke up on the 14th day And I said, like, my father probably doesn't want to live the way he's living. And when I had that, when I went through that, it just changed the way I think about leadership. It just like tempered my entire philosophy about love, care, affection, and consciousness.
How
And
did it
like,
change
similar
that?
thing.
What changed?
So for me, like, like at that time, I made a promise to my father. I said, I'm going to look out for all the angels that are similar to him
Mm.
and make them empowered. And my life has been a series of accidents, Elizabeth and Richard. Like, I work for large companies. I work for Coke, I work for PepsiCo, I work for Walmart, I work for Walt Disney Company, I work for basically American Eagle. One thing which was common in all of these companies, the law of large numbers. Law of large numbers. Lot of people, lot of people, lot of people. And so all these are incredibly beautiful supply chain companies. And I envisioned, and I kept seeing, because you set your intentions and your mind begins to see what you want to see. And I started seeing angels everywhere, everywhere. And then in 2017, I had a similar experience. Now my mother was sick, and I became the voice for my mom, for her stillness, for her will. And by then, by God, like, I was super successful. I had all the titles, but I had nothing. I felt like hollow. I was chasing validation from others. I was not chasing the dream that I wanted. And I made a promise to my father. So at that time, like, I had the second calling. And at that time, I was fully determined, by God, I'm actually going to create something very fascinating for, like, for humans to become like extraordinary in what they do, to capture the humanness. Like the guy who goes out of the way and doesn't care that he did not finish the delivery on time, but goes to an elderly house, like, a customer who's elderly, and makes a delivery of grocery and pharmaceuticals to them. He didn't care about, like, basically like running overtime or not over overtime. He just did what was right. The guy was running into the house of an elderly person whose house was in fire. And these are not like made up stories. These are actually the real stories that people don't hear about,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how do you capture the humanness of these people and make them extraordinary souls? And when you're able to do that, every transformation, every industry change becomes easy, because you have the power of masses with you.
So
Power.
how do you capture that? How do you capture the within the system, within a business context? How do you capture the humanity there and
Yeah.
channel it to the right business purpose?
Yeah. So basically, the way we have conceptualized, if I just sold virtues and values and everything, like, we live in a very capitalistic world. No one would buy that. Let's be honest about it. Okay.
Right.
So the way our network works is, you see this at your door today. You have a FedEx driver showing up at the door, a UPS driver showing up at the door, another carrier like an Amazon and a USPS mailman. Everyone is coming to your door, and subconsciously people are replicating, building more delivery companies to the door. The problem is, it's very similar to utility. You don't have like one company delivering water to your bedroom, one to your master bathroom, one to basically your living room, one for your
Mm-hmm.
kids. You don't have that. You have like one unified system. So the most efficient last mile is one where basically you're consolidating everything to the same door. So that gives the efficiency play. Now, I overlay that as a feature, like what I'm talking about, these digital angels, the angels of compassion, the angels of, like, temperance, the angel of, so these are all virtues that make us very human. And we give the control back to the humans to basically override the machine decisions. I'm a delivery driver. I'm making a delivery. I know that I have to go there. I can make an exception to that process. So you're bringing
So
the human into the loop, and and basically amplifying their goodness while you're driving the efficiency at the same time.
So if you're, I'm just curious about how this fits in with your work with the agentic AI. So if you're programming AI agents,
Yeah.
which I want to have my own like 1,000 AI agents to do everything that I don't want to do. I mean, is there room for human intervention if you're using AI agents to do all these tasks for you?
Obviously, right? People have been very fascinated about autonomous delivery for a while. I remember I have a lot of patents on that. People have been talking about like autonomy is coming, like it's almost coming, it's almost there at your doorstep, and it never came, even after a decade. You know
Mhm.
why? Because I'll give you a classic example, and like this will drive home the point. In India, when you're driving around, right? Like people like put their right hand and take a left turn. They put the left hand out and take a right turn. And they put both hands up and then they drive straight. So the driver would basically, like the guy who's driving the vehicle is trained to think in 360 degrees, like don't even like pay attention. I understand the context of like what's going on. So they're able to adapt. But what they're not able to adapt is a cow sitting in the center of the road. The cow cannot communicate its intent to you. It doesn't understand your intent to her, right? And so we live in a very similar society where things are always going to be heterogeneous, always heterogeneous. So we are always going to live in a hybrid world. And hence, basically, human is always going to discern more, feel more, think, obviously they can think. Thinking is actually like now getting sort of outsourced to AI, but the feeling,
Completely, by the way.
right? But the feeling and the humanness is still very human. You cannot replace it. You cannot replace it.
So we have to take a commercial break now. This has been a fascinating discussion and has really started opening my eyes a bit to the interaction between human beings and potentially and artificial intelligence. And when we come back, I really want to know what the word heterogeneous means, because I haven't heard that one before. You're listening to Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gerhardt, our special guest, Shekhar Natarajan, who is the CEO of Orchestro.AI. We'll be back right after this.
So I'll bring us back.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So 3, what?
Yeah, go.
Do you want to do the clapper? Do we need the clapper?
No.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to the Passage to Profit Show with Richard and Elizabeth Gerhardt, and we are talking about supply chains and AI with Shekhar Natarajan. And very fascinating discussion. I mean, we are talking humanity, we're talking AI. But
He's a very high-level thinker.
he is. And Shekhar used a word that I think is kind of a new one. I don't know.
Could you repeat the word and explain it to me? Because it sounds like it's a good word, and I want to know what it means.
It is, you mean to say heterogeneous, or you mean to say angelic intelligence?
Heterogeneous.
I like both of those.
Well, I'll explain both of those. So what is heterogeneous is like dissimilar things. Like basically a autonomous vehicle can go side by side with the guy who's actually driving the car. Right? So we live in a society where we are always going to have things which need to coexist together. And we as a humanity have always coexisted together. We welcome people who don't look like us. Like, look at me. Just look at me. I basically came from India with $34 in my pocket. This country is the most beautiful country that anyone can be in. It created so many opportunities for me, and I'm sure I wouldn't have been the same if I was elsewhere, because all I had to do is keep my intentions clean and keep working hard, and things started to happen to me. So that is the beauty of this country that makes it very unique. It is welcoming, it is beautiful, it gives you opportunities. If you have right intentions, good goals, It's going to make you like, realize your dreams. So for me, when I think about like all these systems that we keep talking about, whether it's AI, whether it's artificial intelligence, autonomy, all kinds of robots running around, boy, like these are all great things. But what it does not do is like feel like a human. And hence, like instead of building artificial intelligence, how about we start building angelic intelligence? Angelic intelligence. Angelic intelligence is bringing out the goodness in people, unleashing that imagination, unleashing that creativity, unleashing that kindness. See what happened in Texas. Such a disaster. Such a disaster. But one of the most beautiful things that happened in that, even in that like trying circumstances, is people who did not know other people just showed up out of love, out of compassion. How does a machine capture that?
Well, it's interesting as we go through this AI transition and we integrate artificial intelligence more and more into our lives. I think most of us meet it with some
Skepticism.
Yeah, some mixture of fear and excitement. But I don't think anybody's talking about the potential to enhance the human aspect of people. I think we're all, or I am at least, looking at it sometimes as a way of sort of almost taking things away from us, taking away the opportunity to think or to master skills, and they're not really being a replacement for those activities, right?
Yeah.
And if you're looking at it as an additive rather than a subtractive, then I think that can bring new potential to us. I'm not sure what form that would take, but
Yeah.
I think could be potential there.
Absolutely. See, like I like, let's rewind history. Let's think about history. Let's think about civilizations. I come from a land where there's a lot of cultural heritage. Dates long back. It goes like long, long back. And there was and this, I'm not talking and glorifying India and all that stuff. I don't want you guys to think that. But like there was a notion of zero. There was a notion of mathematics. There was a notion of physics. There was a notion of astronomy. There was a notion of astrology, right? All of these existed. And over many generations, it got lost. And then like in 18th century, people show up and start basically figuring out that like sun does not rotate around earth, like it's the vice versa. Right? And math gets figured out, and gravity gets figured out. And but when you go read some scriptures, people are levitating. How the heck was that possible? How are they building temples which basically carried many boulders up the hill, and they were able to construct a beautiful temple with architectural marvel in it? Who actually taught them that? And what was lost? And why was it lost? And in the world of AI, this is the most scary thing that actually bothers me. If you keep training AI, it would think baby peacock is basically the smaller version of the peacock. But we all know baby peacocks don't look like peacocks, by the way. And people will think that baby peacocks are small peacocks. Right? So we're going to lose the context and basically the intellectual property of what it is. And we're going to assume what you read and what you see is reality. It is not reality. It is hallucination.
Right.
Well, and Richard read an article just the other day. You were going to bring
I was just going to bring this up. So
about how this person was saying, well, just accept hallucinations as part of life. You're just going to have to live with them. And Richard and I are like, no, we don't think so. I mean, we're not going
to have to settle for anything that we don't have to settle for. It's free will.
Right. And I think I was at a seminar and a few different people spoke about AI in different industries. And one thing that came out is AI I like that you say AI doesn't have the compassion, but it also doesn't have the curiosity. So AI is,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's not going to do basic empirical scientific research because it doesn't even know what it's trying to do,
Yeah.
right?
Because all it did is like learn the data from the world.
Right.
Yeah.
World is basically curated with good data and garbage.
Right.
And
So
like
it's
you are
sort of,
basically mixing the good with the garbage, and you're, eventually you're going to
Yeah.
come up with all garbage. And like, let me give you one simple exercise for all the readers, like, and all the viewers on this podcast. Please go do this once. So come up with a biased solution of something. Like say like, like I'm the greatest guy in the world, and just give your resume. And AI would say, like, give it to ChatGPT. And it would say, yes, you're the greatest guy in the world. And here's why. There's a confirmation bias to that. Now take the same resume and give it to Grok and say, just shred this like resume.
Mhm.
And it would say, yeah, this is like the lousiest resume I can find in the world. And then take it to another one and say, give me a moderate view of everything. And then it'll say, like, here are all the strengths, here are all the weaknesses. What is it doing? It's confirming your biases,
Mhm.
right? So models have been trained with a lot of bias in sight, and with a lot of data that is is available generally. Not all general purpose data is right. Why do I say that? Sometimes you go to Google and see like if a restaurant is open, it says it's open, but it's not really open.
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Right.
before the show, Elizabeth brought up the SAP, which is an ERP system that was, I don't know, first popularized probably back in the 80s, right? And 90s. But at the time, people thought that those ERP systems, and it was a software that would organize operations for a company, right? So you would organize invoicing and inventory. And the idea was to use software to essentially kind of micromanage different aspects of the company. And it was thought that uh, that SAP ERP system would make things more profitable. Well, it's been years, and those ERP systems have worked somewhat, but they're not perfect, and they still require a lot of human intervention. And I think the point that Elizabeth was going to make, if I can put words in your mouth, dear,
Yes.
was that this is not so far away now from the artificial intelligence that there was a lot of optimism to begin with, and it did do a lot of useful things, but as things played out, it turned out not to be the perfect solution to everything. And I'm kind of interested, Shekhar, on what you think about that.
Yeah. So let me give you the real perspective, right? Like so all of these plannings, like let me go back to the evolution of supply chains. Like I think like the readers would really love to know, like how did supply chain even evolve and all these things, like and so there were really four like evolutions to supply chain as we know it today, right? The first one was the world of GMs and Fords and the milkman, two extremes. The GM and Ford was a vertically integrated supply chain in the sense they made their own parts, they made their own assembly, they made their own cars, and basically they had their own distributors where you would get the car. So they managed the end-to-end process. And then there were the milkmen who actually would milk and come and give you the bottle of milk at your door. So it was like do it yourself. So those are two extremes of the supply chain that existed, and it was not even called one at that time. People called it with a different name. And then the economy opened, and people started to find where can I produce cheaper than what I'm doing, and who are my consumers. So everything got separated in time and space.
Mhm.
So the producer happened to be in China, and the raw material happened to be in Tanzania, and basically the metal was supposed to come from Congo Basin because they were all the cheapest sources. So the hunt for the cheapest source and how do I manage the pipeline of the flow of goods became the second evolution of supply chains. That's why when you see and talk to supply chain people from the 90s and the 2000s, all of these softwares that you're talking about, Richard and Elizabeth, they were all good in managing the procurement processes, like how do I pay my bills, And how do I plan the inventory right? Okay. Then came the third evolution, which is Amazonification, right? Which is I click a button and I get it. So stop going to the stores, get it to my house. Stop buying a basket, give me like one item at a time. That's the world that Amazon created. So what used to be available in 1,000 stores, you would go to a Walmart store, you would go to like the closest neighborhood store, you buy stuff and you come back home. So you're buying your own basket. Now it had to go access 130 million households. And then as Amazon became more and more popular, this was the third evolution. So it became like it went from B2B businesses, like business to business movement, to business to consumer movement. Very different. 130 million households, very different than going to 1,000 doors. Now everyone is trying to catch up on that journey. That's where the future is going to go with supply chains. And in that world, the consumer, you expect something to be coming to your door at a specific time. So it's like a factory like thinking. I want it at 8 o'clock, so it has to leave a certain like depot by 6 o'clock. Hence, it needs to get there by like 5 o'clock. Hence, someone needs to get it like from the other place on an 8-hour journey, prior to that. And hence, the entire supply chain is stitched like a time-based network. So what happens in a world where so many people are involved? Nothing works exactly to the plan. And if nothing works to the plan, what do you need? Not another planning system. What you need is a better execution system which would adapt to these changes. And the world has not built one. So SAP, while a great planning system, could not really figure out how to manage exceptions. And hence the humans are always involved in that. So this journey of perfection is one of like evolution. It's a utopian goal. Perfection is utopia. You're never perfect. And hence there's always going to be human in the loop.
Yeah.
Well, that's reassuring, I think,
Well, I
perspective.
Yeah, and I think in terms of that, instead of worrying about AI taking your job, you have to make AI work for you right now. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, so I had a meetup last night, and I'll talk about that a little later. And I put it through a software program, and then I took it and I put it through ChatGPT and said, do a summary email. The meetup was like an hour and a half long, 2 hours long. And it spit it out, and it's like perfect. Well, close to perfect. It wasn't 100% perfect because nothing's perfect. But in the past, it would have taken me like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
go
it's
through
very
all that.
tempting. I mean, how can you resist a software that does that? We have time for one more question or comment from Shekhar, and we did mention at the top of the show that you had 150 patents.
Yeah.
As an intellectual property lawyer, of course, I'm enormously curious about this, but maybe for our listeners, you can tell us which one of those 150 patents is your favorite?
Well, the one I'm building right now, angelic intelligence. Angelic intelligence is basically, think of that as uh, like a consciousness operating system. Like, how do you bring super consciousness into the process of decision making?
Mm.
And like, how do you, like, what is the architecture of the digital angels? Like, there are obviously 27 angels, and then there are like 7 like categories it belongs, and like it's very similar to the 7 like energy points that you have in your body, the 7 like planes of like consciousness, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of like correlation to like the world of consciousness, which is like really like the best in you. It's not like seeking the outside, it's like what is best in you, and basically unleashing that. So I have filed for what 40 patents. This is like beyond the 150 that I have, but this would be the most beautiful thing for me. And the reason why this is very beautiful for me is I talked to you about my father, I talked to you about my mother, I want to talk to you about my son. My son looks exactly like my father.
Wow.
Okay? And when I held my son, I said to myself, I'm going to leave a lot of angels in your life. A lot of angels. Not a million, a billion. because that is going to be generational impact.
Mhm.
And for me, this is deeply personal because it is what I'm trying to do through this journey, both personal and professional, and what I'm trying to build as a company is all tied together. And it is to leave a better future for kids like my son. We don't need to figure out how to go live on Mars. We can just make Mother Earth look better.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a very interesting patent, and I'll be very curious about how it turns out. It sounds like it would be an amazing concept to protect. So, and speaking of intellectual property, oh, Shekhar, before we go, where can people find you if they want to contact your company and maybe get some information about AI and logistics?
Not in a police station.
That's good.
Well,
that was easy. So yes, they can find me. They can Google me. They can LinkedIn me. They can. I'm pretty searchable. And anyone who's interested remotely, not even connected to entrepreneurship, and is just looking to someone to talk to, I would be happy to pick up the call and talk to you guys, even if it's not business related.
Is it your full name? Should I spell your name, or would you like to spell your name?
Yeah, it's like Shekhar, Shekar, but it's not, it's like salt and pepper shaker, but it's Shekar is how it's phonetically written. And Natarajan, Nat as in Thomas, R as in Robert, Jack, Jan. Now you could probably see, because every time I had to speak my name to a guy sitting somewhere on a customer service call, I had to just spell every letter out.
Well,
S Smith, H Harry, E Edward, K Kite, A Apple, R Robert.
Well, thank you for that very generous offer to our audience to reach
Yeah.
out to you and share your wisdom and engage in some interesting discussion. Speaking of intellectual property, it's time for intellectual property news. And today we're going to be talking about intellectual property and artificial intelligence, two of our favorite topics. And
Mark Cuban has just become our best friend.
so tell us about it.
So Mark Cuban has been speaking about this, and what he thinks is that IP, intellectual property, is going to be king in an AI world. He thinks people are going to be hoarding their intellectual property and buying up the best talent and locking it up behind intellectual property.
So there's two pieces there. One is the talent piece, and the other
Mhm.
piece is the intellectual property piece. And sometimes when people talk about intellectual property, maybe from more of a business standpoint, they're not necessarily talking about the patents, trademarks, and copyrights, but they're talking about the intellectual capital that the organization has, right? So this is the knowledge that's within the organization. And if you've been following the news lately, I guess Meta has been trying to hire away people from other AI companies. In the article here, it mentions Scale AI's CEO, Alexander Wang, offering them a $100 million signing bonus to jump ship. And just gives you a sense of the value that people are placing on the talent and the knowledge that these pioneers have. So I'd like to turn it over to our panel. Noelle, you've been listening patiently. I know you're very involved in the AI space. What do you think about this trend? Do you think Mark Cuban is right, or do you think he's a little off base?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating. I'm in the software as a service space, and so a lot of what we talk about is moats. So, how are you protecting your business? What's your key differentiator? What's your value proposition? And so, on one hand, I think that piece around Scale AI, may be kind of a way to get around some of the M&A regulation of, hey, we can't see too much consolidation. So now we're seeing it at the individual talent level instead of acquiring entire companies. So that I think is probably part of that move. But, said in another way, I think there's pieces of that that are very spot on. And, Mark is a very savvy investor and has done very well with a lot of the bets that he's made. I said I think about it in terms of moats. Brad Feld, who started Techstars, says another quote that I think about all the time, that says, in the gold rush, you don't necessarily want the gold, you want the shovel. So thinking about like the infrastructure of how are you owning the stickiness of the infrastructure around this movement. And so that's a lot of what I think about, is not necessarily, we haven't gone through processes on filing patents, but thinking about how do you create stickiness in your product that's really hard to replicate. So yes, I think, there's pieces around this on, what's your moat, what's something that somebody can't come in and replicate right away. Part of that, I think, is also just the real application. We're talking about OpenAI is a very different company than a company like Illoominus. With Illoominus, we're leveraging AI to solve a very real business problem. And so I think those that really understand the industry challenges and know how to solve those with these tools, I think that in a way, like your real understanding of the problem is a differentiator where, somebody's not going to vibe code your way out of that in the same way as you just really understanding the problem you're solving. Another
So,
thing that oh, go ahead, Richard. I was just going to build on that.
no, go ahead. Build
Well,
away.
I mean, I think that, yes, we're talking about intellectual property on the technology side. We're talking about talent that's building solutions and, the mobility there. Yes, you may have some challenges of like some of the things that you figured out leaking around. But another thing that I've been thinking a lot about and having a lot of these conversations around lately is that I think in this new age with AI and automation, that trust is also a real currency that's not necessarily reflected in that statement. As in, there's going to be a lot more information, there's going to be a lot more quantity of information, but I think folks really trusting on quality information is going to be important. So those relationships, those referrals, I think that people are going to double down on those things because you're going to realize I can't trust a product demo with a company that's saying that all of these things are ready when they're probably not ready in the market quite yet. I want to
Yeah.
talk with somebody who is actually using the product to tell me, is this thing good? Do you like working with them? I think that level of trust is going to be really important. So
Right.
with that,
Okay,
go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I was just going to amplify that a little bit because I do think that, AI agents can be a real challenge, and if they get it wrong, I'm sorry. The
Totally.
article we were talking about yesterday, or earlier in the program, mentioned hallucinations as a feature as opposed to a bug. Right. And so
Yeah.
if you're using an AI agent to book a hotel in California and the hotel doesn't exist, that makes the AI agent pretty useless, right? If
Yeah.
it hallucinates a hotel
Yeah.
or something else. And so I think the realness is super important there. And
Yeah.
and it's really to your point. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
Curt, what are your thoughts about all of this stuff?
I think Elizabeth Noelle made some really good points there. With respect to Moat and our business plan and how we propose to engage our markets, I think it's important to note that, at least my observation, AI fits really well in certain places, and I think it doesn't fit so well in other places. And I think it's still pretty new. I think there's definitely some reluctance, probably from the demographic of age, to engage with AI. One of our fundamental core values at Moat is to have, people that can talk to our clients and our customers and not put them through the 1-800 number thing, and not put them through a chat robot as their primary contact. But that's I think that's unique to Moat and what our products and services are, and who our target customers are, that they're more elderly. And I'm not that young anymore. And when I think about not too long ago, I came to the conclusion, we just don't need satellite TV anymore. We don't watch that much TV, but I guess I need to switch to something else, and I need to cancel what I've got. It probably took an hour to get through all of the rigmarole to get my satellite TV provider to just quit, just let me go. And I think that in my experience, customers don't want to do that. They don't want to fight for what they're trying to accomplish, and they don't want to start with engaging a chat robot on the internet. So again, my take is AI is got some unbelievable applications. When I think of an emergency room in a small rural town, suddenly someone's in there and they're injured, and is there an applicability for AI to help a diagnosis in a life or death situation? I think there is. And Richard, you're an attorney. Not too long ago, when you wanted to do research, you'd go to the bookcase behind you with literally hundreds of books and start combing through them, trying to find applicable case law. Is there a better, easier way to get to the right answer quickly there? AI certainly would seem like it fits there. So
I would say only in the short term. In the long term, I spent a lot of time looking through those books, and I learned a lot of information that was not necessarily related to the topic that I was researching, but that came back to benefit me years later. So I guess the jury's still out, if you'll pardon the legal pun, but about whether or not it's as beneficial as we think it is. And I just wanted to go back to Noelle. I had one question before we had to move on, but I'm coming back to it. Would you consider hiring talent from another organization in the same way Mark Cuban is talking about how the AI companies are trying to secure top talent? Would you consider that as a strategy, or do you think you're better off just sort of, building from the ground up?
Yeah, it's not, I think it's what we hire for is very much mindset, very much behaviors. I would not necessarily say our strategy is to go and hire somebody from another company and to think that they're going to bring that type of information to us. I don't agree with that strategy, but I also don't believe that there are other companies that are building a solution and understand the problem that we're solving in the same way. And so that's not necessarily that's not necessarily the strategy. One thing to bring to life, because I know that, these listeners probably like stories quite a bit, but it was interesting with Curt saying, there's some places where AI does need to exist, and there's other places where it doesn't need to exist. We work with HR leaders, and when you think about the core, there's lots of different responsibilities, but the core things being around hiring people and the core things being around paying people. And I think that I've even just in a short amount of time seen very real stories where because of AI and automation, because of those bugs that you all brought up, people were paid the wrong amount. And, actually on the bonuses side, and they were overpaid. And then you think about the risk that that puts on a business of now, how do I go and recoup that? How do I deal with this on a trust and communications front? I had another case where, we were actually implementing a new, really interesting HR solution, and we had a referrals program at a previous employer, and there was this new candidate CRM system. So essentially, like, how do you manage recruits? And it would automate a lot of the communications. And, you think, hey, that's a really easy way to incorporate AI and automation, but, that onboarding experience is key to somebody having a good beginning experience at a company. And I had a woman that I had referred, she'd gone through the entire interview process, had a job, had accepted an offer, and then got an automated note that she didn't get the job. And so this was just like such a faux pas, but just
Wow.
thinking about, hey, it's one thing when I go into chat and I'm, I'm typing in and I get a weird answer. And I had that happen just now with like a bio that I was sending to something else. We can kind of get over those kinds of things, but these very real administrative things that can be some of the easiest things to automate, there are very real implications when you hear about those things also going wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Shekhar,
So-
your thoughts on Mark Cuban's comments about talent and Mark Cuban's comments about talents and IP.
Well, I think I agree half of the story and the other half I don't. Intellectual property cuts two ways, right? So there is something called trade secret, and then there's something called intellectual property. It's difference between the two. Okay. So trade secret is what you really want to do, and like you don't want the rest of the world to know that because that's your trade secret. That's the trade you're in. Okay. And intellectual property is something that gives you an exclusive right to use that for a period of time, and then it becomes public. Okay. So when people talk about intellectual property and protecting intellectual property, well, in essence, there's no protection after a period of time. Like what we're really talking about is trade secret. That is not really like, is published anywhere. So patents like are excluded from that kind of thought process. But where it comes to talent, and I agree with Noel and I agree with like Curt on this topic, it is not really like pay $100 million, and like some of that I don't think is even accurately depicted, because some of it is just like media getting created because the next guy who get poached out of ChatGPT, you know they don't want them to have an offer they feel is not $100 million, so they shouldn't walk away. Like it's kind of like creating a defense mechanism. That's why it was actually planted in the media in the first place. Okay, so there's like even like I don't even agree with like 100 million packages being sent out and doled out. Like that needs to be verified and checked. But what I would definitely say is look for the heart and look for the intentionality on your team. That's more important. If you can simply buy people for money, they're only designed to be attracted to money. So the next guy who's going to give them more money, they're just going to go there.
Yeah.
So what is your moat? Your moat is the problem you're trying to solve, the mission you're on, and does the team believe in what you're trying to do, and hence they're solely committed. I'll give you the example of my team. My CTO used to make 10 times more than what she's making. And she has a 4.5-year-old kid. And she lives in California, in the Bay Area, paying like a mortgage, but wants to do this. And she left a FANG company. Why? Because the love for the work outweighs the love for the money. And when you do it right with good intentionality, obviously wealth follows, obviously legacy creation follows, obviously mission is accomplished. And that is what I would look for in people.
Mhm.
So just to amplify what you just said, people here, this is Benjamin Mann, who is the co-founder of Anthropic. He said, people here are so mission oriented. He says his team turned down those mega offers because they believe more in the mission than the money. So, after several millions of dollars, how much more do you need? And the mission maybe becomes more important, right?
Yeah. So
Anthropic's
I will
trying to
tell you
change
this,
the
and this is like the fact, and everyone knows I'm probably like relating the obvious to you guys. When my father died, we just cremated him. He did not take anything with him. But what he left was goodwill, right? And so, like, I'm not saying that don't chase money or wealth and all those things. We all need money to like live a basic life and have like the security for our kids and family and generations beyond and all that stuff. I'm not like, I'm not asking you guys not to pursue that, but that should not be the only pursuit in life.
Right.
The
Well,
pursuit
and
in life is basically like leading a life that has purpose and intentionality. And every human being in this world is capable of that because God has gifted you guys with that power. Unleash that power.
I agree. I mean, one
Pretty
thing I
true.
wanted to say at Anthropic, they say they're affecting the future of humanity, whereas people at Meta just want to make
Mhm.
money. And so that's really what those people are so driven to do, I guess. And what does your future of humanity look like? You could ask anybody, and I get a million different answers, but it's kind of
I'm not
scary a
sure I
little
want
bit.
the future of humanity to look like Facebook, but
Exactly. Like, it should not be like, or it should not be like, one of those giants. Like, they're all mechanized to where, like, to a place
Yes.
that if they even come out and say we care, people should be really skeptical about it.
Yeah.
I would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wonderful discussion, and I think we really are getting to the root of some aspects of artificial intelligence and motivations, and talking about the importance of intentions. I think those are all things that are important and we should keep in mind. And I would also like to add, if you have an idea or invention that you want to protect, contact us at Gerhardt Law. We work with entrepreneurs worldwide to help them through the entire process of obtaining patents, trademarks, and copyrights. And you can visit our websites, learn more about patents.com or learn more about trademarks.com for a free consultation, or you can download your free entrepreneur's guide to patents or trademarks. So we have to take a commercial break now. We have Secrets of the Entrepreneurial Mind coming up soon. So stay tuned.
Okay. So you're going to bring us back?
Yes. Does anybody
Oh,
need
this
a
is so
break or
interesting. Thank you
anything?
so much. No, this is so good.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having us. And Noel, you're doing
Oh,
like
no.
it's good. I love you guys.
Well, thank you.
Oh,
We appreciate that. But the show is all about the guests, right? So everybody gets some credit, right? So we're coming back, and so 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everybody. It's Passage to Profit. We're a nationally syndicated radio show heard in 38 markets across the U.S. We'd like to do a shout out to our affiliate, WARK, in Washington, D.C., and Hagerstown, Maryland. Also, our podcast is ranked in the global top 3% of podcasts, and we've also been recently selected by FeedSpot Podcasters Database as a top 10 entrepreneur interview podcast. So subscribe to the Passage to Profit show on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and also on the iHeart app. So now it's time for Elizabeth Spotlight.
So this is where I talk about my activities apart from marketing for Gerhardt Law. And of course, I have the podcast studio. As I had said earlier, I have a few clients and a lot more work to do to get more clients, but we're working on it. And I also have a meetup group. It's called Podcast and YouTube Creators Community that I started with Stacy Sherman. Now Sonia Satra, my coach, is helping me with that. And I find today's conversation incredibly interesting in light of what we talked about last night at the meetup. Sonia is a motivational coach, and she's just an overall wonderful person. But she has well, she gave a handout out, and she has kind of this mission to help people find their why. And it was very much what Shekhar was talking about. Sorry, as why do you want to do anything you want to do with your life? And so she has a series of questions, and she led people through it, like why, like, and you finally get down, and she gave example of how she did it for herself, and you finally get down to, well, this is what I want to do with my life. This is what I feel my life's purpose is. That's why I'm doing all this other stuff. So I feel like AI is making us examine our humanity much more than we ever did before. It's really pretty interesting. And anyway, so we had that meetup, and on September 16th, since this is an AI show, I'd like to really plug this. We're having another meetup, the next one. We're not doing one in August, and it's about AI. So we have somebody who's really into podcasting and the AI effect, and he's going to talk about the new Chat GPT. And he talks about AI and humanity in general. His name's Rob Greenlee. Then we're going to have Stacy Sherman, who does customer experience, and it's different than customer service. It's the customer experience, and we're going to be talking about what people think about content. Do they like the AI generated content better for podcasts, or do they like human podcasts? Be really interesting. And then we're also going to have one of our attorneys, David Postolsky, there to talk about the intellectual property concerns, especially copyright. So copyright and AI and podcasting and creatives is just this huge tangled up mess right now. He's not going to be able to straighten it out in an hour. I'll tell you that. But that's our next one. And I'm really enjoying this meetup because we're getting really interesting people to come and present, and we're talking about interesting topics. And AI, everything Richard and I do now, it seems like every presentation we go to, every show we do here, every meetup, AI comes into it one way or another. It's here to stay. But anyway,
Yeah.
do you have a comment, or you want to go on to the medical minute?
Well, I was just going to say, Rob Greenlee is predicting that Google is going to be gone by the end of the year. It's going to be replaced by Gemini.
Well, Google search will be replaced by Gemini search. Yeah. And it's already starting to do that. It's already, when you type in something on Google, it's coming up with the Gemini answer.
So
Yeah. So we'll see if he's right,
the
but
world keeps changing. So
follows this closely.
what about the medical minute?
Oh, well, this is an AI medical minute. I think it was Curt. It would have been a great lead into this. It still is, when he was talking about how AI can find medical issues that it's really hard for doctors to find otherwise. But this guy was in a motorcycle accident and he broke his ankle, but he didn't know it at first. He just went home, one of these tough guys. I got at home for a couple days. And then it was really hurting, and he looked like he had a cut that was getting infected. So he went to the doctor, and they're like, "Oh man, you broke your ankle in 3 places." I don't know how he lasted 2 days like that, but there you go. And they cleaned up his wound and everything, and they gave him antibiotics. I sent him home. Goes next day, his hand starts trembling. I'm doing it on the YouTube video, if you can see it. His hand starts trembling, so he goes back, and they're like, "Well, we're not really sure what would cause your hand to tremble, but we have this AI assistant we call Kate. So we're going to take your whole health history, like you have diabetes, you have this, you have that. We're going to put everything into Kate, and we're going to ask Kate if she can figure out what's going on." So it turned out that he was getting sepsis, and sepsis is hard to determine at first. So it's an infection that just goes through your whole body and eventually kills you, and it's hard to control. And if you let it go, it can be really bad. So ended up that they did have to cut off his leg, part of his leg, because of the infection and the sepsis, but he didn't die. And without this AI intervention, they think he probably would have lost his life instead of just part of his leg.
Yeah, I mean, so that's really to Kurt's point. I mean, and that technology is available anywhere, right? I mean, it's just a matter of having an internet connection and
Yeah.
a computer that can handle it. So
Yeah, I don't think this was a big hospital anywhere. I think it was a small hospital out in the, some rural area or something.
yeah.
So
So I mean, it's pluses and minuses. I mean, there's a lot of benefit. But on the other hand, what if it was hallucinating? And I guess, I'm pretty sure that they would not have cut off his leg without doing, further investigation and diagnosis, right? So once they
Yeah.
caught the sepsis, then they were able to prescribe a
I-
diagnostic. But what if it came up with the wrong diagnostic?
I think they would catch it. That's why you always have to have a human involved. But doctors make mistakes all the time now. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
but anyway, so with that, I would like to go on to our next presenter. So Noelle London is our next presenter. You've heard her speak a little bit. She is the founder and CEO of Illoominus. So she makes HR systems talk to each other, so you can really figure out what's going on with your HR. So welcome, Nicole. Tell us all about it, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Wait. I said
Sure.
welcome, Nicole. I'm
Yeah,
so
you need to
sorry.
say Noelle. So.
I'm sorry. Okay. Welcome, Noelle. Tell us all about it, please.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. So with Illoominus, what we have built is the first employee data platform that is both powered by AI and built by a community of over 300 HR leaders. Essentially, what we do is we help organizations transform their data that is scattered across many different systems. We help them to transform that data into actionable insights on what's happening across their employee journey. So, especially as we think about AI and automation and what that means for how we have to move skills and employees through organizations, that's a lot of what we do is through our software platform, we support mid-market companies to understand, organizational health and what's happening, but then also helping to plan for the future of their workforces.
I think that's great because HR is critical to the functioning of any company, the effective functioning of any company. And in my past experience, when I worked for large companies, I was not always impressed with the level of organization within the HR function. And so to me, it seems like this is a really great idea. How would the system benefit employees?
Yeah, so when you think about it, most organizations are spending, and it really varies between industries, but employees typically are going to be the largest expense that an organization is going to have. So, in retail, that may be around 50% of their annual operating budget is actually going to their people. But typically, because they're operating off of a lot of different systems to manage their employees, that data is going to live into different places. And so they don't necessarily have a good view on what's happening across that organization. What we tend to see is, for example, we can just go into retail because I mentioned retail just now. With, retail customers that we've worked with, sometimes they're seeing that employees are leaving, 70% of them may be leaving every 90 days. What that ends up translating to is for the business, they're losing over $100 million in cost every single year to folks that are leaving. So when you ask, what does that do for an employee? What we do is we allow an organization to understand why people are leaving and why their employees are leaving. So by us highlighting those things, what that's allowing them to do is to be more proactive on how to manage their people, to listen. And that also ends up translating to helping them to bring down their expenses year over year. I would say, what that could look like, for example, is, within a retail environment, probably 80% of your employees are going to be frontline workers. We found that the number one reason when we were bringing the data together that folks were leaving as quickly as that they were is because they weren't getting scheduled for enough hours. So, hey, if I'm not getting scheduled for enough hours in the store, I'm going to go and find another job because I've got to pay my bills. What we also found is that there were systematic issues on why people weren't getting more hours. So, for example, if you are working in a retail environment where you need to be trained to cut fabric or you need to be able to use a meat slicer, those are things that sometimes require trainings and certifications. So by us being able to say, is there a high performer that's within the stores that's not getting as many hours as we want them to get, they're at risk for leaving. We can go and proactively certify those individuals in new roles. And so they're able to get more hours on the job. So that type of holistic thinking of data that lives in different places, how do we think proactively to approach our employees to both improve their experience so that our good ones aren't walking out the door, but also to overall support the business and the ROI of those spends. So that's, I think, a lot of how we see that all come together today.
Great.
Well, so I'm sorry. I'm having a throat. If HR data were a novel, okay, this is a little bit odd question, but let's go there anyway. What would be the plot twist most leaders never see coming?
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because if HR were a novel, what I would say is that we become the encyclopedia as Illoominus of bringing the different pieces of information together so that you can actually make use of what's happening. I would say, every organization is unique, but and I would also say, Richard, I know you were saying early on, you weren't necessarily impressed with the HR organization where you were previously. What I'd say is that the role of HR has completely changed. It's also completely changed in the last 5 or so years of, oftentimes when you look at an HR function, we would have thought pay, we would have thought let's hire people. I think now because we've watched that organizations have had to adapt so much in the last 5 years to their workforces, work from home, vaccine requirements, inclusion, healthcare changing, all kinds of things. Every single time, frankly, that you open a newspaper now, every headline is probably something that an HR leader is thinking about. Uh-oh, what does that mean for my people? And what do I need to think about it? So all of these things that, a marketer gets to do marketing, a finance person looks at the books, a lot of the things that are hard to measure have been put on an HR leader's plate. So especially as you start thinking like huge societal changes, huge technology changes with AI and automation, HR is oftentimes right now being asked to play a really important role in figuring that out.
So
So
what kind of role is HR being asked to play when it comes to people's social media? Because see things in the news all the time. This guy got fired because he posted on social media, or he reposted something and got fired for it. And then somebody else can do it and they don't get fired. How does HR handle that?
I would say that is probably one of very many different things that HR has on their day-to-day plate. I would say like to the point of that, I think that comes down to values and behaviors, being very clear about what that looks like and understanding how you all respond as a leadership team to those types of scenarios. What I would say is also, hey, Elizabeth, today it may be social media is the thing that people are thinking about. Tomorrow it's going to be something else. And so I think that's kind of the key when you say, what's the story? What's the novel? It's almost like we're reading a novel where the plot is constantly changing and you're just trying to keep up. And so that's kind of the key that we're seeing is, a year ago we were talking about, there's always a great resignation, a great stay, a quiet quitting, coffee clock in. There's always there's kind of a theme du jour for HR, but the key that they have to be able to navigate through is how do they have the data that's telling them the story of what's happening over time, and how do they take the data that typically that novel would have been looking historically at, what happened last year from a compliance standpoint. I've got to report out on what happened with my people. Now, what we need that data to do in this novel is help them to predict the future of we don't know what talent needs that we have in a year, but we have to understand how we look at skill sets and what we start hiring for so that I'm actually prepared for the future of my organization.
So, how much of a company's culture is or should be attributed to the work of the HR department versus the management and the leadership of the company? How do those two interact?
Yeah, HR does not own culture. And that's kind of this, it doesn't sit in a silo. Organizations that think HR owns culture, it's got to start at the top. Who builds your culture is your CEO, your founder, your executive team. And you've got to have alignment at that table and at that team. I think that what HR does is HR is a reminder when you're sitting at an ELT table and you're making a big strategic decision. Hey, let's acquire a company. Hey, let's go off, open a new office in XYZ country. you're always making those kinds of decisions. What HR is doing is making sure that you're asking the question of how does this impact our people? What do we need to do to hold on to our best talent when we're making these kinds of decisions? But I absolutely believe HR doesn't own culture. They're there to create accountability for culture. They're there to facilitate conversations that are, how is culture being translated through the organization? But it's got to come from the top up down, because everybody's watching. What is that CEO doing? How's that CEO responding? HR is there to make sure that that's being translated throughout the organization.
Well, I don't know if you have the answer to this question because I know you're not like in the HR departments at these companies, but before COVID, people could gather around and say really stupid things to each other. And then somebody would get mad and tell HR. And then
We still say stupid
You know,
things to each other.
then when everybody went on Zoom, it was a little harder because you weren't really one-on-one with somebody at the water cooler saying, you really look like crap today. Did you go get drunk last night or something? And really insulting the heck out of them. It was harder to do when people weren't physically together. Did you notice any differences in terms of people filing like harassment suits or any of that during COVID versus in person?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, we're not in the employee relations side of the house. I again think, in the past we might have thought about HR around, and HR wears so many different hats as we've talked about. We might have thought of like who's getting their paycheck, who's hiring somebody, and who's complaining about somebody and getting somebody fired. Like those may have been kind of the buckets we would have thought of before. Our focus at Illoominus is we do a lot around organizational health and organizational design. So typically, we're not necessarily touching employee relations claims. That's not really our area. Where we focus is we'll bring together system of record data. So like your work days, I know you all mentioned SAP before. So like SAP success factors, we'll bring together recruiting data, engagement data, performance data, and pay data. So what we're essentially trying to understand is what is somebody's experience when they're at the organization? What is their employee journey? We bring that critical HR tech stack together to help somebody understand, was Noelle a high performer or a low performer and she didn't get promoted in this amount of time? How's her salary changing over time? Can I actually understand what does the archetype of a high performer look like at my organization? What is that journey? What is that career path? The same way we would think about like marketing type analytics. What we're doing is saying, hey, what's the archetype of a high performer? How do we learn what that looks like through data that's living in different places? And then how do we take that and communicate that of, hey, Noelle, you want to grow within this organization. This is your path to do that.
So Shekhar, do you have any questions or comments for Noelle? Oh, turn on your mic.
Sorry. I said Noel is probably one of the most articulate people that I've ever heard talk about this topic in a way that is so commonsensical. Because, people always think HR equal to culture. But culture is a living organism that evolves as people get added into the organization. That is why you're always constantly morphing the culture, and they are actually accountable for it. And what I believe is going to be true in the future is one of the things to really watch out for. And this happened during the COVID times, is when people get separated in time and space, which is what COVID did. You begin to lose the human connection, which makes companies. And in the world of AI, where machines are going to begin to make decisions on your behalf and guide you in the process, you're going to have a similar thing come to life. And how do you protect yourself? So that I think is going to be the moral dilemma go forward. And I think one of the things I would love for Noelle to also start thinking about is how do you retain the cultural integrity, the community aspect of the businesses, the values that actually companies aspire for. How do you set the temperature of what those values are? Because a lot of these companies have values on the board and in the boardrooms and in the hallways, but they never live them. You know, so they never we actually stand by employees, but sorry, we're just letting go 10,000 people.
I love that one.
We want to be environmentally conscious, but sorry, we're going to start making things which are not good for environment. Okay, just pick your poison of what you want to really do stand against. And I think that the ability to not only hold people accountable in what I would call the physical world, now has to translate it into the digital realm, because AI doesn't have heart, it has mind. And we all work with heart, because the mind rationalizes our decisions rather, right? So I think that would be the kind of the unlock for the future. How do you retain that? And I think what she's doing is amazing, because I've lived all these large companies. The problem is spot on. What she's going after is really needed. Retaining the values of the company and all those things would be super critical and ingredient for her journey as well, I feel.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
So Noelle, have you ever delivered bad news to a client or given them data that made them uncomfortable, or an insight that kind of disappointed them? How did you deal with that? And maybe you could give us a little teaser about a situation like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that's part of what we have to do. And to Shekhar's point, I mean, for example, you're talking about how do we have these values and then lay people off? We're not saying you're never going to lay anybody off. It's a tough environment, it's a tough economy. Companies are having to contract. You're going to have to do these things, but the way that you do them and the way that you execute them is super important, because it's also, that's your employer value proposition, that's your reputation, that's your brand in the market. Where if somebody sometimes you have to let people go, but you can do it in a way that's compassionate and supports them as they're thinking about their next role. So we're not saying everything should be fluffy, and we know you've got to run a business. You're trying to create a high performing team. What's the best way to help you to do that? Yes, we've had to deliver hard feedback to our customers. Our platform is delivering that hard feedback to our customers. Sometimes people do want to see it, sometimes people don't want to see it. But integrity and what we set out to do was to show people the data that they may have had anecdotes for, and they may have been operating on anecdotes instead of data. And so we're going to show what we're seeing within their system. So but I also think in terms of delivering hard news, I don't know one HR leader on the market or in the market that doesn't get bad news to them most days at this point. So I also know we're working with a very resilient bunch.
Well, that's good to hear. And I couldn't agree more with how a company handles a downsizing is very important. And it's not only just for the people who are leaving, but the people who remain, right?
Yeah.
And
That's right.
understanding that says a lot to the people who stay behind. Yeah. So
Yeah. I
So-
agree.
so how can people get in touch with you, Noelle, and learn more about your company?
Yeah, so check out, we're oftentimes posting what we're seeing in the market, best practices on how HR leaders are adopting AI on our LinkedIn page. Maybe you can put a link to us in the show notes. I joke sometimes that I need to have a spelling bee for people that can actually spell the name of our company, but it's going to be ILLOOMINUS.com. So you could subscribe to our newsletter if you're interested in, how we're incorporating AI into HR practices. We do have a community for HR leaders. If, you've got a friend in HR, they probably need help. And so check in on them, make sure they're doing okay. But also if you want to, share our community of resources with them, because we're oftentimes bringing folks together. Everybody's trying to figure this out right now. No one's doing it perfectly quite yet. So the more that we can bring people together to share those best practices and support each other, that's best. So yeah, check out our website, check out LinkedIn. We'd love to chat with you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. And now we were on to Curt, who has been waiting here patiently. Curt Moore is building a moat around your home title. So think of your home as a castle. Every person's home is their castle, and there's a moat around it so nobody can come and steal your home. So his company, Moat Title Security, uses legal innovations to freeze out fraud before it starts. This sounds pretty cool because I've always had title problems. Anytime we've done real estate, there seems to have been some weird title thing. So tell us, hi, Curt, tell us how you operate and what you do.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it. What Moat Title Security does and how it's designed is to use legal documents that we've built and copyrighted to place those in the public records to protect people from title fraud and from squatters. So we've built a what we call a notice of title freeze, which essentially works like a credit freeze, if you're familiar with that. It essentially would say, hey, look, my name's Curt Moore. I own this property. I don't have any intent of selling it or putting a mortgage on it or really doing anything to affect the title. So I'm just going to freeze my title. And I'm going to place that notice of title freeze in the public records and let the public know that that's my intent for my property going forward. If I want to transact, such as sell my property or take out a new mortgage or a second mortgage, I'm going to need to release this title freeze to allow that to happen. And if I don't do that, something gets recorded that happened against my will, and that is to be presumed fraudulent. So the intent of a notice of title freeze is twofold. One, it would deter a potential attack. If you think of someone considering attacking my personal property, they're going to research the public records and learn what they need to know to prepare that attack. And they're more than likely, if they're good at what they're doing when they're researching, they're going to bump into that notice of title freeze and they're going to say, now, what's that? It kind of seems like this guy's paired and defensive of exactly what I'm trying to do. Probably they're going to move off and go attack somebody else. So the first line of defense is deterrent. If they do make an attack, our document is designed to provide valuable evidence to the courts of law to say, hey, look, exactly what I just said. I had no intent to sell my property. I had no intent to place a mortgage on my property. There's very clear instructions in that notice of title freeze for how those things could happen, and they didn't happen. And I'm claiming that this recording, this conveyance, is fraudulent, and it lines up with exactly what I've trying to prevent when I froze my title.
So Curt, let me ask you just to interrupt here for a second.
Sure.
Is title fraud an issue? I mean, is this something that is prevalent? Can you give us some information about that?
Sure. That's a great question, and it is, and it's becoming more prevalent. It's an interesting question. I first had my first experience with title fraud. It tried to happen to my elderly mother all the way back in 2014. That's where I got this idea back when I was in a different job in a different part of my career. It is a thing, and it's unfortunate in this day and age that people would do things like this, but it is alive. It's not particularly difficult. It's not particularly complicated, and it's not particularly expensive to execute as a fraudster. So it is a thing, and currently you could really do one of three things. You could do nothing and just say, I hope that doesn't happen to me. And I think that's probably the vast majority. Property owners are probably in that place. The second is in the last 5 or 10 years, people have began to monitor their title. There's many services out there that will monitor your title, keep an eye on your title, largely using AI to see if something got recorded, and they'll give you an alert. Did you just intend to take out a mortgage on your property? And if they did, they'll say, yeah, that was me, or no, I don't know what that is. And it's a reactive notice that something may have happened that you need to be concerned about so you can take action. Our view is proactive. I think monitoring your title is better than doing nothing. But our view is let's just freeze it up in the public records and let the public know that we have no intent to change our title without first releasing that notice of title freeze. So to answer your question, it is a thing, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. If you have a chance to get to our website, we've got a news drop down that has many examples of how it's happening and where it's happening.
Okay, Curt, but I'm just dying to know. So what happened to your mother? Can you tell us that whole story?
Sure, yeah. So my mother, my father passed away probably 20 years, 25 years before my mom passed away. So she's living alone. She had some pretty difficult medical experiences. Was in the hospital for quite some period of time, some pretty dramatic surgeries and recoveries, and she's just getting older. She's getting more forgetful. But we got her out of the hospital, got her into her home. Like most people, they just want to go home, and she just really wanted to go home. So we get her home. And one Saturday, I went to check on her, and I pulled up to her house, and there's some guy on the porch, and he's arguing with her on the porch. And I'm like, well, what is this clown doing? So I, interceded, got him out of there, and mom's in tears. And, she's like, well, this guy says I'm selling my house to him. And I'm like, no, mom, you're not selling your house to this guy. And this guy was pretty offensive, big guy. And it was intimidating to me, let alone to my mom. But I got him out of there. And at the time, I was working in the energy industry with a ton of lean into public records, researching public records, filing documents in public records. I passed the story along to our counsel at the company I was working with. He said, "Oh yeah, that happens. People try to take advantage of the elder. They try to get them to sign deeds, and sometimes they even just prepare a deed and they just file it on their own accord." So to quickly get through that long story, I was working in the county where my mom's property was located. I just alerted the clerks at the office there. I said, if someone comes in here trying to record a deed, and I gave them my mom's name in this property address, let me know. And sure enough, the guy showed up a few days later and tried to present a false deed, a fraudulent deed, and record that, and they stopped it. So that's again, that's 2014. So flash forward 11 years later, I believe the risk and the interactions of these types of things is only growing. It's back in those days, you really had to go to a clerk and recorder's office and present things in person. Now you can do it online. It's just making it easier for everyone to try to take these actions. So
wait,
that's the story.
What happened to the guy? Did they just let him go? They didn't try to.
No, again, big guy, and he stomped off. He grabbed the papers and stomped off, and so we diverted the attack, but there was really nothing we could do to try to.
So he went and did it to somebody else.
Yeah, but don't people have title insurance? Doesn't that cover the situation? I mean, it's like we spend a fortune for title insurance if we're, with the mortgage and all that.
That's a great question, and you have to be careful what type of insurance you're getting when you close on a property, and the title insurance. The policy you get when you're closing on property is to protect the buyer from anything from the point of sale all the way back. So if there was something missed in the title review leading up to the closing, maybe they missed a release of mortgage or they missed a lien or something, the buyer is insured against any claims that might come forward there, and that's going to fall into the title company's basket of cleanup. But generally speaking, it's not common to insure against risk going forward. So from the point of taking possession of the property forward, that is not a very common place to place insurance. I believe it's available. It's just not very common. But if you're going to rely on what I just described with my mom, her title policy when she purchased that property would have done nothing to cure this.
Got it.
Wow.
So what do you do? I mean, how do people implement this process?
So we try to make it as simple as possible. If someone is interested in freezing their title, they can reach out to us, confirm that we're active and available in the state where they live. It's a little bit of a slog to get our documents considered on a state-by-state basis. We're in that process of pushing it through to get into all 50 states. Currently, we're in 8 states, and just kind of building and testing our systems and our processes. But if someone's interested in freezing their title, they reach out online through the website. You can reach out to an agent, to the office, and we'll walk you through how to apply for a notice of title freeze or for our other document, which speaks to preventing squatters. So we try to make that process pretty easy.
So it's Moat Title Security. So do you have any success stories where somebody said, wow, somebody tried to steal my house and this stopped it?
We haven't yet, but I will tell you, we've had cases where people have frozen their title and then they essentially just forget that they froze their title, and they'll apply for a second mortgage, and it'll get stopped when the title company that is charged with closing their mortgage bumps into this notice of title freeze. They'll read it and they'll say, well, we can't close because we can't, you've frozen your title. So you're going to need to release your title freeze before we can go forward with the closing. So that's very reassuring to us that it lives where it matters in the public records, and it's serving the purpose that it's intended to do, which is stop things from moving forward. But to answer your question, we've not had anyone have a full-on title attack against a property that has a notice of title freeze yet. Hopefully we don't.
Well, maybe they see the title freeze and walk on to the next one.
Yeah. That's again, I spoke to that a little earlier. Deterrence is our primary win. A secondary win is use it to fight back.
Got it. Shekhar, do you have any comments or questions for Curt?
I lived it.
No.
No, in the sense. So I used to work for Walt Disney Company, and so my wife actually spent all her energy trying to rebuild our house in Valencia, California. It's like Santa Clarita area. And so then then I had to move for my job, like when I started with Walmart. And so I came to the Bay Area, and so we did not want to sell the house, and we said, let's rent it out. And so we had one very good renter, never a problem, always on time, greatest, very nice guy. And they kept the house as though it was theirs. Very nice man. Okay. And then he ended up buying a house, and we brought in the next set of renters. And then COVID happens. Okay. And then people can just make up things along the way, saying, if I'm not able to pay, you can basically just not pay, defer the payment. Okay. And so the tenant that I had would literally not pay the rent, but she would keep buying cars.
That's not good.
So this is the ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my whole life. And then basically we're trying to get her off, we're trying to evict her and all that stuff. It goes on and on and on and on. And then luckily one of my friends said I know this amazing lawyer, Dennis Block. He's based in LA, and he said he's an eviction specialist. You should go talk to him. And so we went and talked to him, and he was able to get a notice, get her to evict. But boy, that whole experience of it was not so much that someone encroached into your property. When you know that my wife literally all the living daylights trying to actually build the house she wanted to live in. Right? All the care she put in, all the she picked out every little small detail in the house, and someone comes and squat.
Jeez.
Yeah.
The only intention was to basically skirt the system.
Yeah.
And while you want to like basically like think that the world is really like made of like good people, um, sometimes people's intentions are not well placed, and you always have to protect yourself against those eventualities.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you get them out? Did you?
We got them out, like, and like, so the obviously what they the mistake they did, like, because we did not renew their lease and they did not pay us. Essentially, they had like, they were served a notice of like, 30 days to leave the house. They just disregarded it, thinking that I could not. And then the cop showed up and then got them evicted completely.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, you were lucky, I guess, because I've
I'm
heard
like
lots.
super lucky.
Yeah, I've heard lots of cases
We've
where
heard
they
lots
can't
of
do
cases.
anything.
But
Yeah.
there's something fundamental about property, houses, and people live in those, right? So,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of law around those situations, and
Yeah.
it sounds to me like your title freeze is a great idea.
Yeah, I
It's
think
it's a
so too.
fantastic idea. And like, like what are the odds that I would be on this podcast with you all? Kurt talks about like title freeze, and I am the victim of title freeze, or
I know,
about to
that
be the
is
victim
kind of
of
weird.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
So the angels are working in our favor.
The
I
angels
would
are also
say.
working for me here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll jump in here. Freezing your title is we believe the strongest, most proactive defense to someone attempting to harm the title to your house, steal the equity to your house, perhaps record a deed and then try to quickly resell your house and get a bunch of earnest money deposits. There's any number of ways they can do that. But the other product we offer is a notice of occupancy, and that speaks heavily to protecting what Shekhar just described. What that document does is says, hey, look, and my wife and I have some rental properties, and we certainly use this. Look, I own this property. I'm worried about this type of fraud. Whether I occupy this property or not, there's just not going to be any tenant in this property. Full stop. And if anyone is ever found to be in the property, they have no right to be there because I'm saying that's not my intent for this property, and I'm making that a public record. And then we have what we call a little side ramp for that is if I do elect to have a tenant there, I will record a notice of property lease. It'll identify about one party that is allowed to be in that property as long as they live up to their property lease and the terms and conditions of that. But other than that, if anyone else ever shows up in the property, they're there illegally. They've trespassed and they're unauthorized occupants of my property. And speaking a little bit to what Shekhar just went through, if someone shows up in your property and takes over, it's vacant property or a second home are good targets. If they just suddenly show up, your natural inclination is to call the authorities and say, "Hey, look, I own this property. Someone's in there. Get them out." The perpetrator is gonna spin that. When a police officer shows up or sheriff's deputy, they're there to investigate crime. And the perpetrator is going to spin that to, oh, no, Curt said it would be fine if I live here. If I just do some handyman work, and he said we don't need a written lease. He says it's fine. Look, I got the keys. I got the garage door open. Everything's good. They want to spin that quickly to a civil dispute between the two parties so the police can't take action. So we believe our notice of occupancy will unravel that story quickly because you can present that to the local authorities and say, look, I was worried about this. It's happening. The only way that party could have been in there is if I would have recorded a notice of property lease. And guess what? There is not one of those recorded. So they're in there. I'm claiming they're in there as squatters. Get them out. It's a new product. We don't have any experience with someone using a notice of occupancy and then having this happen, but we believe it'll definitely benefit a property owner for having that in place in the event that they do encounter a squatter.
Well,
And
thank you.
it really depends on the state as well.
That's
Like,
right. That's
you're
right.
actually operating this, because it could be a pro renter and a pro owner depending on the state.
That's
And
right.
in that case, like, this is even more important, a protection to have.
That's right. That's right. You're exactly right, Shaker. Spot on. There are states that are very pro property owner and will lean into property owner rights. And then there are states that are the opposite. They're more pro renters, and they'll give renters, even renters that don't have good evidence that they're a legitimate renter, they'll give them a lot of leeway to stay there. And the problem is, if someone does, we've got any number of articles on our website. If someone does take over your property, number one, they're not going to be a good tenant. They're not going to take care of the place. They're not going to treat it nicely. They're going to tear it apart. So if it takes you 3 to 6 months to get them out, when you do get them out, your property is probably going to be very well damaged, and you've got a lot of repairs to do to get it fixed up. So we believe this is a pretty cost-effective way of A, preventing it, and B, defending it if it does come against you.
I agree, because there have been lots of reports of this kind of stuff in the news. So again, this is Curt Moore with Moat, M-O-A-T, Title Security. And thank you, Curt. And people can find your website by typing in Moat Title Security. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, great. So at this point, we need to go to a break. You're listening to the Passage to Profit Show with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. We'll be right back. Okay, so now
Hey,
in the home stretch.
we're in the home stretch. All right, secrets of the entrepreneurial mind.
Okay, I'll bring us back.
All right.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to the Passage to Profit Show with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. And it is time for Secrets of the Entrepreneurial Mind. So, Shekhar Natarajan, what is a secret you can share with our audience?
In my case, it was my mother's code. Okay, and let me tell you what that means. So in the city I actually grew up in, there was this like weird little rule where both my brothers went to Jesuit school, and like there was a rule that said 3 kids from the same house cannot go to the same school. Very weird, by the way. And it was all about giving opportunity to other kids, so that like not the entire family goes to the same school. It's just like a weird thing of like the past, I guess. And my mother had a simple reason. She said, my 2 elder kids go to reasonably a very good school. And and like because of the community we come in, like we could not afford it, like, and we were really blessed to go to that school, like they were really blessed to go there. And she didn't think that it was fair for her and for me to go to a school because I was the 3rd kid. It did not like look fair to her. And so instead of going and protesting and fighting and doing everything, she would go stand right outside the headmaster's office every day for 1 year. 1 year. So I'm 1 year late to the school, by the way. Okay. So, and she stood there silently. She never protested. But every day the headmaster would walk out for the mass for the school. He would see her. And every time he walked back into the room, he would see her, and she would just stand there. And after a year, she outlasted the system. And the rule went away. The moral of the story is, in the entrepreneurial journey, you never know whether you're going to be successful or not. But you should have the moral courage to outlast the system,
I
to
like
get to
that.
success.
Yeah, that's
So-
great.
So that's my code. That's what I live by. Like, I never give up. I'm Mr. Relentless.
All right. Yay. Okay. So Curt Moore with
Yeah.
Moat Title Security. What is your secret?
Yeah, that's a tough one to follow. That's a great story, Shaker. I think I would boil it down to be passionate about what you're doing in life. It's in my opinion, people oftentimes get drawn to making money or having fame or being well known. I think it's much more sticky if you can do something that you're passionate about and you believe in. And kind of augmenting on that, in my past career, a 30-year career, at times having between 50 and 75 people reporting directly or indirectly to me, people would come into my office and say, well, I've got this problem. What should I do? And, I would just say, well, what's the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do here? I mean, it is a complex problem, and we'd have a partner. We have some kind of other potential adversary here. What would you want to have done to you if you were on the other side of this? And so I think there's something, and it aligns with what Shekhar's representing there. Just do the right thing. It's never the wrong time to do the right thing, and be passionate about what you believe in, and fight for it.
I love that. Yeah. I'm going to ask Richard now.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stick with the kind of theme that's been weaving its way through our program, which is the moral thing and doing the right thing. I think at the end of the day, having more success is not worth it if you have to compromise your own principles. And sometimes I think we can get caught up in our world, and I certainly have, and we make mistakes or we cheat ourselves a little bit. And at the end of the day, it's not worth it, because having a good feeling about yourself and doing things that are consistent with your values will benefit you more in the long run than taking shortcuts for a short-term gain. And I think that's pretty much the lesson that I've gotten out of this show.
Yeah, if you don't tell lies, you don't have to remember what you said, right?
That's right.
Well, I'm going to say for mine, I'm going to go down in the weeds a little bit. So I'm going to say to anybody listening, learn how to do the queries for the large language models. I'm talking about ChatGPT. I'm talking about Perplexity. I'm talking about Google Gemini. I'm talking about Grok and Claude, all of them, because the reason I'm saying that is they're teaching it in the high schools now to the high school kids. And if you're older and you remember when you used to be able to teach your kids how to do stuff and then it kind of flipped because they were learning stuff in school that we'd never been taught, it's going to be like that. So I think that it's going to be like, I don't know, it's going to be taking over. And I think the more you can teach yourself and learn how to do the queries the way that the software will give you the right answer is going to help you out. And if you're ever looking for a side gig because AI took your job or something, that if you can teach yourself and how to do queries well enough that you can teach it to other people, you can always start a consulting gig, right?
Sure.
But I really feel like it's going to be important. You don't have to embrace AI 100% and love it, but you know how you have to know how to use it, how to make it work for you. And I think that's my secret.
Yeah, and I would just, kind of follow on that. We still meet people who have never tried ChatGPT. Not one.
Fewer and fewer.
Yeah, but it's so if you haven't tried it, try it. It's free, and just type in a few things and see what it's like. This is the way the world's going, and at least a little familiarity with it can't hurt. So. Well, that's it for us. This episode of Passage to Profit. As mentioned earlier, we're a nationally syndicated radio show appearing in 38 markets across the U.S. And I'd like to say thank you to the Passage to Profit team, our producer, Noah Fleischman at iHeart, our program coordinator, Alicia Morrissey, our studio assistant, Risikat Busari, and our social media coordinator, Carolina Tabares. Look for our podcast tomorrow, anywhere where you get your podcast. Our podcast is ranked in the global top 3% of podcasts, and we've also been recently selected by FeedSpot Podcasters Database as a top 10 entrepreneur interview podcast. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. And for all your patent, trademark, and copyright needs, our firm Gerhardt Law offers free consultations. Contact us at gerhardtlaw.com. And while the information provided during this program is believed to be correct, never take a legal step without first checking with your legal professional. That's it for us. We'll see you again next week on Passage to Profit.
Yay.
All right. It's a wrap.
Great job, you
Very
guys.
good.
Yeah,
Very
I know.
good.
So much.
I know we're way over. Sorry about that. But thank you. This was a great discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
so-
you.
And
Thank
everybody,
you.
you have your emails and so, feel free to reach out.
Okay.
Lots of times our guests find benefits mingling with other guests. So
Yeah.
please keep that in mind. And
Absolutely.
and thank you very much. It was very nice working with you, and we'll let you know when the episode is released, and hopefully you can help us promote it a little bit. So
Well, definitely.
Sure.
Definitely.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much. I
Bye.
appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.